Powered by Riverside.
What's going on, everybody? And welcome into a brand new episode of the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Codd, and the Circuits of the America this past week happened down at Austin, Texas, and our first road course race of the 2025 NASCAR Cup Series season took place. Super excited to talk everything with all of you. Interesting layout when we look back at the 2025 Cup Series schedule to start the season, right? We had Daytona, we had Atlanta, then we had the Circuits of the America, and then we're not getting our first non-drafting oval until this week at Phoenix. We're in week 4 of the NASCAR Cup Series season, so super excited to be breaking down COTA with all of you. Once again, welcome on in. If you're live with us on YouTube, multiple things going on. Feel free. Our Blown Engine chat line is wide open. I know we have some fans of certain drivers that got spun out this weekend down at COTA. I'm sure there is some anger that wants to be leashed on our chat line, our Blown Engine chat line. Again, if you're on YouTube, hit us up while we're doing this episode. But before we get started on COTA, I want to talk about a couple of things as we usually do each and every week. First, multiple ways to listen to us. So I want to thank everybody. We just celebrated our 2-year anniversary here at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. What was it, Tuesday? Yeah, yesterday. Excuse me. Yesterday was our 2-year anniversary with this podcast. And man, each and every single one of you fans have made it absolutely special to be talking NASCAR with all of you each and every single week. We want to continue being your voice of NASCAR. We continue wanting to grow with you and your friends. I think one thing, like I said before, what I really wanted to do with this podcast was basically have a open garage forum. What do I mean by that? You all outside with your buddies talking about sports, similar to this with NASCAR, right? So again, I hope you're all, again, appreciate all the support. I hope you're all enjoying that type of style of format, but multiple ways to listen to us. First, join us each and every single week on Tuesdays during the Cup Series season on our YouTube channel at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. We'll be doing live episodes each and every single week. Would love to hear you voice your opinion on our chat line. Again, if you have missed our live stream on Tuesdays, our show will be uploaded on our multiple platforms on Wednesdays. Those platforms are going to be Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and of course our OG platform, Spotify. Couldn't be here without them. And again, feel free to hit us on our YouTube channel at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. And again, if you love what you're hearing and find us enjoyable, well, that's right. You can subscribe to us at YouTube or follow us on Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. So multiple ways to listen to us. Let's go into a couple of the show announcements before we get deep diving into our loaded episode tonight with topics. Show announcements. You've been hearing me the last couple of weeks say this. First, show on the road, Pocono, our BWB annual tailgate. Hope to see you there June 22nd. I'm super excited for that event necessarily because I think that's A, it's in my backyard essentially. B, I love to bring new people who have never seen the sport come up and tailgate, party, and watch the race with us. So join us June 22nd, 2025 at the Tricky Triangle. Second, Dover. We will be doing a live episode down at the Monster Mile on July 20th to lead us up into the NASCAR Cup Series race at the Monster Mile. Again, I think a lot of people have heard me say this. I stopped going to Dover for a while because of all the rain. This year, they moved the date to July 20th, and I'm going to be there, of course. NASCAR made a promise to change the date. I'm hoping to God that they got it out of the rainiest part of the Delaware Sea, out of the Delaware. And I'm hoping that they put it, this weekend is going to be much better for us in NASCAR. We will be doing a live episode. We will not be doing a tailgate like we did at Pocono, but we'll be doing a live episode. So if you're at the Monster Mile, stop on in, come find us, kind of join the show live. Final show announcement this week. I apologize to all of our fans. I have made multiple switches on the days that we're going to be recording, and I just noticed that in our multiple ways to listen to us. I have felt that Wednesdays have always been our better day in regards to the Broken Librarian podcast, just because of personal situations, different types of stuff like that. My old co-host, it worked better for him on Tuesday, so I wanted to accommodate my man Vince to push the show back on Tuesdays. But I am going to do this one last time. We are now pushing the show, and we will start be recording every Wednesday moving forward. Wednesdays will be the live episode of the Broken Librarian podcast. I feel like Wednesdays work out a lot better. I've had some great viewerships on Wednesdays. I want to continue that trend moving forward with all of you. So Wednesdays moving forward is the night of our live episode of the Broken Librarian podcast. And I get it. I know I'm going to be competing with a very, very popular podcast on Wednesday nights, but I'm looking forward and embracing the the battle, right? So, all right, cool. That's going to take us on our green and white checker flag on our show announcements this week, and again, multiple ways to listen to us as well. So, let's get into, like we usually do each and every week, let's get into our fast headliners, courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on X, Facebook, or by web at www.jski.com. So, headliner number one this week: Cincinnati Incorporation expands partnership with William Byron. What is Cincinnati Incorporation? Well, they're a leading machine tool manufacturer, and they have now become a associate sponsor of Hendrick Motorsports for multiple years. They're going to be a primary sponsor of the two-time Daytona 500 champion William Byron, and those races, Cincinnati will be on that 24 car. Will be at Kansas on September 28th and Martinsville on October 26th. So, two playoff races that the 24 team is going to have Cincinnati Incorporation on the vehicle. Headliner number two: Austin Cindric will be sporting a Dale Earnhardt throwback scheme at Darlington this year. Cindric's number two Freightliner Ford Mustang will sport a blue and yellow design inspired by the 79 and 80 number two car driven by the late Dale Earnhardt. If you have not seen a picture of this just yet, I mean, I'm going to tell you right now, they nailed this paint scheme out of the park. Last year, I will say this: Kyle Larson's 5 down at Darlington Throwback Weekend was absolutely incredible. This Cindric one's going to probably run parallel. I mean, the curving of the number and everything on this car looks fantastic. Update number 3: if you're heading to the Chicago Street Course, Zach Brown Band to headline 2025 NASCAR Chicago Street Course race. Saturday night concert. It's going to be with the Zach Brown Band. Update number 4: Eero will be sponsoring Josh Berry in 3 races. Eero is a company headquartered in San Francisco, set out to make Wi-Fi and networking the way they should be: fast, reliable, secure, and easy to use. So Eero will be on Josh Berry's car for 3 races in 2025. Update number 5: Katherine Legge to make a Cup debut at Phoenix with Live Fast Motorsports. Legge is a seasoned competitor with a wealth of experience across various motorsports disciplines. A known sports car specialist, Legge is one of the 9 women to have raced in the prestigious Indianapolis 500, where in 2023 she set the record for the fastest qualifying effort by a woman in the event's history. Legge's other accomplishments extend to sports cars and endurance events, including podium finish in the ISMA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship and participation in the world-renowned races like the 24 Hours of Daytona. Katherine's impressive racing portfolio also includes starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and the legendary Pikes Peak International Hill Climb, showcasing her adaptability across a wide range of motorsports disciplines. So Katherine Legge will be racing at Phoenix this upcoming weekend at Live Fast Motorsports. Excuse me. Last but not least, update number 6 this week: Pocono Cup Race will remain the Great American Getaway 400 presented by VisitPA.com. That was made in a joint announcement with Governor Josh Shapiro. So we do have a title back. More reasons to come join us at our annual BWB Pocono tailgate. So those are our fast headliners coming out of this week. Again, all fast headliners courtesy of jski.com. Follow them on Facebook, X, or by web at www.jski.com. So, all right. Before we head into Coda, I think a lot of fans, and this was more of a hot topic going into the off season. It started in the playoffs. We didn't know what the 2025 charters was going to look like in NASCAR. In September 2025 or 2024, excuse me, NASCAR came across this deal that kept the charter system in place. A lot of owners decided to go with it, right? Didn't think it was the best deal, but they just went with it. Two organizations did not, and that was 23XI and Front Row Motorsports. Obviously, there has been a long legal battle going on ever since the fall of 2024, and it's still rolling on today. I feel like a lot of fans were kind of wondering where this updates have been in regard to this legal battle. But this week, NASCAR ended up countersuing 23XI and Front Row. They also countersued Michael Jordan's agent. All over the charters. Article this week, NASCAR countersues 23XI and Front Row, as well as Michael Jordan's agent in dispute over charters. Article courtesy of Jenna Fryer of AP Auto Racing through NBC Charlotte. So again, Charlotte, listen, from Pennsylvania, guys, get my Charlotte knowledge there. Looking up the news, got my Charlotte information right there. So in this article, Jenna Fryer outlines this. NASCAR this past Wednesday filed a counterclaim against Michael Jordan-owned 23XI Racing and Front Row Motorsports, alleging they willfully violated antitrust laws by orchestrating anti-competitive collective conduct in connection with the most recent charter agreements. The charters are NASCAR's version of a franchise, as we all know. Guarantee 36 of the 40 spots in each week's field to teams that hold them, as well as their financial incentives. 23XI and Front Row, as we know, they ended up suing NASCAR, alleging NASCAR and the France family that owns the stock car series, they are a monopoly. And when we were talking about this over the summer or over the winter or late fall, early winter, when we got word of this, I said this, I think that NASCAR is in better hands with Michael Jordan in it. I do think that NASCAR kind of had a stranglehold of all financial obligations and financial responsibilities. And I do think that the charters, I think charter teams, they get screwed a lot of the time, especially with this new television contract coming into play. There was a lot of revenue to be decided, and that's why I was all in on Front Row and 23XI going together to sue NASCAR. Continuing the article, NASCAR already has lost one round in court in which the two teams have been recognized as chartered organizations for the 2025 season as the legal dispute winds through the court. So, again, I guess the question coming out of the fall, going into the spring, was going to be, was 23XI going to be a charter organization? Well, they were. They are until this legal dispute is over. Continuing with the article. In the 30-page counterclaim filed Wednesday, which names Curtis Polk, that's Jordan's longtime agent, as a defendant, NASCAR said the undisputed reality is that it is 23XI and Front Row Motorsports, led by 23XI's owner and sports agent Curtis Polk, that willfully violated the antitrust laws by orchestrating anti-competitive collective conduct in connection with the terms of the 2025 charter agreements. Now, I have not read the charter agreements. I have not. I have not read them through. I know that this legal dispute has been going on. So unfortunately, I can't give an opinion on what my or how I feel about the charter agreements. But if it's similar to what it was prior to this deal, I can see both sides of the fence. Where more so 23XI in that front row, because I'm like, to me, I think that they're probably, they're a monopoly. Let's call it as is. Okay. Later in the article, it states this is not the first time that 23XI and Front Row has sought to impose their viewpoints and those of their counsel on the racing teams. With right large, NASCAR continued. And it is truly ironic that in trying to blow up the charter system, 23XI and Front Row Motorsports have sought to weaponize the antitrust laws to achieve their goals. NASCAR alleged that Polk threatened to boycott NASCAR races as part of the negotiations on the new charters and is attempting to misuse the legal system as a last resort to secure terms. More from the article, NASCAR's counterclaim asks for an injunction eliminating guaranteed starting spots for charter teams. If counterclaim defendants persist in seeking to have the charter agreements declared as unlawful under the antitrust law. So essentially, in this counterclaim, it sounds like NASCAR is still not happy. They want to get basically 23XI in Front Row. They're like, if you're not going to obey my rules, we're going to kick you out. You're not. Final article, and again, we'll post this article on our Broken Wheel Bearing Facebook page for your viewer or reading list or reading pleasure. Article is very long. We kind of cut it down so we don't take up the whole show talking about this article. But the final article or final paragraph that we wrote down on the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast for tonight's episode, NASCAR attorney Christopher Yates, in a call after the filing, argued that the charter extension signed by 13 teams provided significant improvements to the previous charter agreements and said NASCAR doesn't need the charter system, but that the teams fought for it in 2016 in the most recent agreement is fair to all teams and gives them what they want. Article from Jenna Fryer of AP Auto Racing. This was found through NBC Charlotte. Let's go over some thoughts here. Reading the article, hearing the counter argument, and the counterclaim, I think NASCAR is completely wrong. I think NASCAR is completely wrong. They have egg on their face. They are not happy that two organizations are making them look like clowns. That's all it comes down to. What 23XI and Front Row Motorsports, again, when they initially did not sign the charter agreement, and when they ended up going after NASCAR in court, to me, they were right. The revenue and the sponsorship model of NASCAR, it's not working anymore. NASCAR is reliant on viewerships, and they are reliant on money getting filtered in for more sponsors to come into the sport. Well, when NASCAR's pocketing all the money, the majority of the money, excuse me, these teams feel neglected. And I said this from the start. The worst thing that NASCAR could have done, the best thing that NASCAR had happened to him was Michael Jordan entered the sport. The worst thing that could have happened was Michael Jordan entering the sport. I'm all for these organizations fighting this case. I really am. And to me, I felt like the new charter system absolutely felt like it was completely rushed. It was not discussed. They just wanted to get an agreement in place because they didn't want to roll this into it. Rolled far enough in the last year. If I'm not mistaken, I think we were in the first round of the playoffs when the charter agreement came through. They started talking about it before Daytona. I think the one line that sticks out to me is NASCAR doesn't need the charter system, but that the teams fought for it in 2016. The most recent agreement is fair for all teams and gives the teams what they wanted. NASCAR doesn't need the charter system. Of course they don't. Why would NASCAR want the charter system? The charter system to me was created to kind of prevent any of this. What's going on? This did not have the money go straight to the pockets of NASCAR itself. But the charter system needed to be ironed out. It needed to be worked on. When you have a new television agreement coming through, like they did this year in 2025 with Fox, Prime, TNT/HBO Max, and NBC, more eyes on the sport, more viewerships, more revenue, more commercial times goes into the pockets of NASCAR. They don't go to the teams. And that's what Denny Hamlin kept saying this whole offseason. I'm fighting it because I think the teams deserve more of the pie. Of course, NASCAR is going to sit there and tell each other and everybody out there, we don't need this charter system. We're just doing it for the teams. To be honest with you, and I get it, it's completely different in ball and stick sports, right? I get it. But you have ball and stick sports. I mean, it's in a similar instance. The charter system is the team. It's the franchises and the teams. But at the same time, there needs to be checks and balances. So here's the whole thing that everyone's like, well, the charter system needs to go, and maybe this is what it just comes out to be. They need it. But at the same time, like with the charter system was put in play to protect the teams. It wasn't there to protect NASCAR. Now, NASCAR is taking advantage of it massively. I heard rumors over the offseason that were basically saying that, NASCAR was looking out for possibly outside people, like outside investors to come into the sport. And someone asked me, is this true? And couldn't really confirm it. I mean, it's all rumors, it's all hearsay. But then it got me thinking. They can't even agree on a charter system. Yeah, you're damn straight. I think it's time for NASCAR to sell a minority share into an outside an outside investor. I look at Josh Harris, who just bought the Washington Commanders. The Redskins Commanders were complete garbage for 20 plus years. When Gibbs retired his second time, I mean, they just were garbage. They got a new owner, came in, fresh perspectives. They were in the NFC Championship game this past year. I think that NASCAR needs somebody like that to be on the board. It just can't be the France family anymore. It just can't be. And for us to even still be talking about the France family is ridiculous. They've done a lot of good for the sport, but they are in constant fights with their teams. And like I said, going back to that point, Hamlin is fighting with the new television deal to give more teams more money into their pockets from this television contract. We'll stay tuned more on this situation. Do I think it's going to go anywhere over the next coming weeks? Probably not. I think I think this is going to be a legal court case for probably multiple months. So, again, article courtesy of Jenna Fryer of AP Auto Racing. That was through NBC Charlotte. We'll post it on our Facebook page, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Take a look at it, read it at your leisure. A lot of good stuff in this article, kind of explaining the countersue. And like I said, I mean, do I think that NASCAR is going to countersue? I don't think so. I mean, they might, but I have a strong feeling that I don't think so. All right. So, from legal court cases out to Austin, Texas now. COTA, Circuit City America race weekend. First, I gotta say this. when they first made this announcement that they were going to the Circuits of America in 2020, when the 2021 schedule came out, 2020 felt like a lot of the break of the old tracks, the old what was like considered the norm, like the regular schedule, all that. A lot of those contracts ended up expiring. NASCAR ended up making it out to be like, hey, let's go to different markets. Let's try different things out now. We're not, pigeonholed to do the two Michigan races a year, two Bristol races a year, two Poconos or two Dovers or two Texases anymore. We're not pigeonholed to do that at this point. Um, I think that one thing that they did completely incredible for me was bringing on the circuits of the Americas. I was a big fan of this move. I thought the move was very interesting. It's another road course in a kind of a high profile city down in Texas. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this course because the course was built for Formula One with two massive hairpin turns. Obviously, we get to turn one, and on the old layout, all the way at the top of the course. But I was excited for the inaugural event, which let's call it as is. The inaugural event was massively disappointing, and Chase Elliott won it, but it was cut short due to the rain, the rooster tails, the massive wrecks when you had Truex and Cole Custer, Kevin Harvick, and obviously it led to Kevin Harvick saying this is the stupidest thing NASCAR could have ever done, was put us on this course in the wet rain conditions. That first inaugural race, if you go back, and I know there we have a lot of historians of the sport, but if you go back and watch that race from 2021, whew, first of all, the car was better, but that's besides the point. Outside that, it was like it still scratched my head and still go. How did NASCAR think this was acceptable? And I get they had the wet weather tires, but this was really, really ugly. It left a real sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. Right? You had that, and then also the race weekend was right before the Coke 600, so it kind of felt like an unnatural, forced event. I think in a lot of people's eyes. Um, I was okay with the May event. I really was. I didn't care if I'm all for like, hey, you know what? Try different things, right? Go from a road course that's extreme to the Coke 600. Like that's back to back weeks of testing the driver's ability to wheel a car. Then 2022, the schedule comes out. They bumped the Circuits of the America to a March date. It was right after the West Coast swing, which to me I thought was remarkable. I thought it was a good idea to put Coda at the end of March, and they've kind of left Coda in a March date. They kind of this year they moved it up after Atlanta instead of going from Daytona, Atlanta to the West Coast. They went Daytona, Atlanta to the Circuits of the America. I was interested in regards to how this season started off because you went to Super Speedway road course, outlier race, outlier race, outlier race. That's what I got for you. I do like the March date. I don't think though. I love the March date for this track. I don't think that we should probably put Coda right after two road courses, and we'll explain that in a minute. Saturday, we had the Focus Health 250 at the Circuits of the Americas. Connor Zilic, oh man, he is, yeah, he's really really good, folks, on road courses. He's a really really good driver, highly respected driver, very good prospect. He's kind of in the Trackhouse Racing system, driving for Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. This kid is going to make waves as he comes up, right? I think a lot of people, when I talk to my inner circle, I really believe Connor Zilic, in my mind, is the next Joey Logano. I really do. I think he's Logano esque in the best way possible. But he did win the Xfinity race down at Coda in the Focus Health 250. over William Byron and Sam Mayer. He had a good amount of time between him and William Byron. It wasn't all easy though for Connor Zilisch. So I'm not going to sit there and be like, well, Connor Zilisch won the Xfinity race, won a road course, shocking nobody. Here it is. Well, no, he actually had some obstacles throughout this race, right? Um, First caution of the race, he ends up making a move. He comes down pit road. He gets penalized for pitting too early. So what happens there? He has to start all the way in the back of the field. I do love what they were talking about between him and his crew chief during the race. They were like, did I really pit that early?" And he said, the crew chief ended up, they double checked with NASCAR. They looked at the cameras and the pictures, and they said, yeah, you just came in a little too early. So he had to start all the way in the back of the pack. Now his teammate Ross Chastain in the Xfinity race ended up leading a couple, or excuse me, disregard that. Ross Chastain did not lead. I'm sorry. Connor Zilisch, again, he started in the back of the pack. I jumped the gun there for Ross Chastain. Sorry about that. Connor Zilisch started in the back of the pack. Now, again, we had a couple leaders in the front during the time while Zilisch was working in the field. You had Jesse Love, ended up leading 31 he led a couple laps in this race. Taylor Gray, there was a good battle between him and Jesse Love. You had Austin Hill, who ended up leading 6 laps. William Byron led 3. Byron ended up winning the stage 1. But like I said, multiple drivers. But then when Connor Zilisch ended up getting in the front of the pack, right, he led 26 laps in this race. One thing about Connor Zilisch that was really interesting, with 20 laps left in this race and 20 laps to go, him and Corey Heim got into it. Now, this is where I was like, there's no way Connor Zilisch can win this race whatsoever. He ended up getting a tire rub from the incident. And again, 20 laps to go, you're like, he's got to pit. He has to pit. There's no way this tire's going to hold, but it did. Corey Heim, on the other hand, from the damage, ended up having to pit. He ended up finishing 31st in the race. So if I was Corey Heim, I'd be pissed. I'm like, of course, Connor Zilisch's tire ends up holding up. But then with, later on in the run, Carson Kvapil, his teammate, was leading this race, and Zilisch ended up getting around him. They end up making contact, and then Kvapil has to pit, and Carson Kvapil ends up coming down pit road. He ends up finishing 23rd in this race. So it was an up and down roller coaster battle for Zilisch all day. Yes, on the scoreboard itself, he ends up winning the race. He won the pole for this race, led 26 laps, but it wasn't the easiest 26 laps I think we've ever seen. When you look at that scoreboard, you're like, wow, he started on the pole, he finished first, 26 laps. He completely dominated, right? No, furthest thing from it, he had a pit road penalty, started in the back of the pack. He ended up having issues, rammed into Corey Heim, ended up having a tire, ended up smoked for a little bit. Didn't think the tire was going to hold up, but it did. And of course, he had he beaten the banging with Carson Kvapil at the end of the race. So that was pretty much Saturday's Xfinity race. Couple things that stuck out to me. One, a really good run from Christian Eckes, who ended up finishing 5th in this race. Colleague to me has an interesting driver lineup this year. I like Eckes a lot. I don't like Josh Williams, but I was pretty impressed with what Christian Eckes can do on a road course. Now, granted, AJ Allmendinger kind of could have been helping him out there as well. Jesse Love, one of my favorite prospects, he ended up running in the front of this race. Him and his teammate Austin Hill, who I wouldn't really deem them road course racers, but they end up having a good run on Saturday in the Xfinity Series. And final shout out, Sam Mayer, who finished 3rd. I mean, this is a big year for Sam Mayer in my mind. Sam Mayer's a guy who was with Junior Motorsports last year. I was utterly impressed with his Junior Motorsports career. I thought he did a really good job. I think he got very upset though, because he wasn't being called up for top rides. I think him jumping ship over to the Fords, I think he felt that he might have a better opportunity to go from the Xfinity Series into the Cup Series going through the Ford Performance Program route than going through Chevrolet, because a lot of the Chevy guys, I'm not going to lie, a lot of the Chevrolets are pretty much locked up for a while. I mean, they really are. I mean, if you look at Trackhouse, well, we already know that they're all pretty much, the three of them are of Suarez, Chastain, Shane Van Gisbergen's locked up. On top of it, you have Connor Zillage waiting in the wings. So that group is all locked up. Hendrick Motorsports, the four aces. You got Larson, Byron, Elliott, and Bowman, who they're hitting their prime at this point. Richard Childress Racing, Austin Dillon, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon, and Kyle Busch, I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon either. So it's, for me, it's like if I'm Sam Mayer, I'm looking at, okay, I might get into a colleague racing car, which Inspire kind of proved that they're going the younger route and trying to grow within that organization as well. So I think the move for Sam Mayer over to Ford is definitely a move that could help elevate his career to the next level. With some of these drivers who are a little bit older, seats might open up a little bit. We'll see. But that's pretty much the Xfinity discussion of the weekend. So, and then on Sunday, we had the Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix live from COTA. The final statistics from COTA, according to NASCAR.com. Your race winner was Christopher Bell, who ended up leading only 8 laps in this race. And then William Byron finished second, who led 1 lap. Tyler Reddick finished third. Chase Elliott finished fourth. Kyle Busch finished fifth. 6th was Shane Van Gisbergen. 7th was Chris Buescher. Noah Gragson was 8th. 9th was Alex Bowman. And 10th was Todd Gilliland. Your winners in stage one the stage winners this week were Bubba Wallace, who ended up winning stage one. And in stage 2 was Ryan Preece with RFK Racing. So, obviously, I just basically broke down the final scoreboard for all of you at home. I'm going to tell you right now, I said that very calmly. Everything we saw in this race on Sunday was not calm whatsoever. None. Not whatsoever. Let's start off with our race winner, Christopher Bell. Okay? Very easy to start off with my man, C. Bell, winning this race on Sunday. I have to admit, I said this last week after he won Atlanta. There's nothing better than winning that first race of the season, especially early, and as early as C. Bell did at Atlanta. I said it last week on the episode. If I'm him, Adam Stevens, and Chris Gabehart, I'm doing whatever it takes because I saw this car in the playoffs fall just short of making a Final Four appearance, and that would have been his third Final Four appearance of his career, third straight. My goal is to win as many races as possible in 2025. Make it the Christopher Bell breakout year. And a lot of people who write for NASCAR are basically now saying that after his back-to-back win at COTA. People are going, can this be the Christopher Bell breakout season? Well, we already know the talent's there. We already know that Joe Gibbs Racing has speed. Joe Gibbs Racing has become very young. Or younger, excuse me. Younger, let's use that word, because Bell's 30. They've become younger. They need that next face of Joe Gibbs Racing. And with every move that has been made this offseason, Denny Hamlin, I don't believe, is the face of Joe Gibbs Racing anymore. But Christopher Bell is. Joe Gibbs Racing, or Joe Gibbs himself, allowed these guys to run on dirt again. He's catering to his superstar talent in the 20 car. And what is Christopher Bell doing? Rewarding Joe Gibbs. Back-to-back wins, Atlanta, COTA. And can this be a Christopher Bell breakout season? You're damn straight it could. And I personally believe it's going to be. And why, and I'll ask this question again, and I'll say this again. If I'm Adam Stevens and Chris Gabehart, I'm sitting there going, dude, we're giving you a race winning car each and every single week. It's records or checkers, bud. It is records or checkers. And so far this season, it actually has been records or checkers. He DNF'd at Daytona. He went back-to-back wins at Atlanta and Coda. Crazy part and the crazy stat from Christopher Bell this year. And honestly, a crazy stat in general for the 2025 season to start. And I can't remember where I saw this from and who ended up writing this. And I'm sorry, I don't know who the source was. But this is 2025. The combined race winners have led the least amount of laps since 1953. William Byron to, I believe, only led, I believe it was like 9 laps at Daytona. Christopher Bell has only led 9 laps all season. Bell's got 2 wins. He led 9 laps and has 2 wins. But like I said, though, if I'm Christopher Bell and Adam Stevens and the company, yeah, you're damn straight. It's records or checkers this year. We're not going to fall short going to Martinsville in October. We are not going to come up short again like we did this past year in 2024. We're going to make sure 2025 we get you to the championship 4. You're going to capitalize in the championship 4. You're going to win. And again, to me, I've said this. Christopher Bell has now, in my opinion, has become the face of Joe Gibbs Racing. He has. Denny Hamlin got, all the old guys are gone. Kyle Busch is out. Joe Gibbs Racing, he's been out for a while. Truex just retired last year. Denny Hamlin's getting older. Not getting the sponsorships like he used to. Lost his crew chief that made him into an elite superstar talent in Chris Gabehart, where Gabehart became the overseer of vice president of engineering at Joe Gibbs Racing. The goal now, and I will always say this, I think the reason why Chris Gabehart's not the crew chief for Christopher Bell is because him and Adam Stevens have been absolutely incredible together. This is Christopher Bell's 11th win of his career. Led 8 laps in this race, but I think what it was the final fourth quarter speed that we saw out of the 20 car that made me realize, oh my God, this guy's legit. It took him a while to get around Kyle Busch, but eventually when he did, that car became almost nearly impossible to pass. William Byron did multiple attempts to try to get by him. Tyler Reddick was still a little too far once he got around Kyle Busch. Once Kyle Busch basically let Bell, Byron, and Reddick go by, the race was on between the 3 of them. But Byron could never get close enough to get around Christopher Bell, and Reddick could never get around Byron. The last sequence of that race, the last 13 laps of Sunday's race at Coda were remarkable in my opinion. That was really good quality racing between 4 drivers, in my opinion. You had Kyle Busch, who was leading the race for a good, honestly, Kyle Busch led the most laps in Sunday's event at 42 laps led. But Kyle Busch's car, and I think this is what happened, he just fought his car so much to get around Shane Van Gisbergen. But once he did, he got out in the air and he led a ton of laps. But eventually the car prevailed and he ended up falling off with speed. And then when Bell came in, I will say this, going into turn 1, I think it was with 9 laps to go, going into turn 1, Bell ends up overshooting the corner. He ends up overshooting turn 1. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. Christopher Bell's going to wreck. But he didn't, and he didn't wreck Kyle Busch. He didn't. What happened was he overshot it. Adam Stevens told Christopher Bell, hey, settle down. We've got plenty of time. Settle in and come up with a game plan. And Christopher Bell did. And Kyle Busch did not make it easy on Christopher Bell at all. So I don't want to hear people go, well, Kyle Busch, his car was slower. He just got out of the way. No, he didn't. He made it really difficult. But the one thing that happened with Kyle Busch, I got to give the driver of the number 8 credit, which it's a damn shame. I really was pulling for Kyle Busch. But the thing I have to give credit to with Kyle Busch is that Kyle Busch did not make it easy on Christopher Bell. But like once he got past, he knew the car was shot. He didn't try to play games with the top drivers. I mean, Byron and Reddick, massively took. They took it, like basically took him out. They were just like, let's get around him. They got around him, and that was it. There was no fighting. Kyle Busch didn't fight these guys to get around him because he knew his car was shot. It's a damn shame for me because I really did think that Kyle Busch was going to win this race. I did, but unfortunately, so much, tire wear, the car gave out. He was losing speed, and then eventually, like I said, the top 3 guys ended up getting through. Now let's talk about the driver that finished 4th in this race. Chase Elliott. So if you look at the scoreboard, Chase Elliott finished 4th. He started 3rd, and he finished 5th in stage 1. You're sitting there going in your head, wow, it's a great day at the office. Probably the furthest thing from it. The scoreboard did not tell the full story on Chase Elliott. Green flag drops. We go into turn 1. Ross Chastain comes flying right up the hill. Ends up dive bombing right into Chase Elliott, spins the car out. Lap 1. And I gotta give a lot of credit because first of all, I gotta say this. I love the HBO Max in-car camera. Because you heard Chase Elliott say it. He's like, was there any that before I do something, was I in the wrong? Did I do anything wrong? And Alan Gustin said no. Next time we see Chase or Ross Chastain, we're just gonna punt him out of the way. And Chase is like, I get it, and I'm all on board for that, but I just want to make sure before I do that, I didn't do anything wrong. Chase Elliott ends up spinning, ends up collecting Todd Gilliland with him, who Gilliland ends up, I know Chase gets a lot of credit. Gilliland ended up recovering himself too. Gilliland spun in turn 1. Gilliland ended up finishing 10th in this race. But in regards to Chase Elliott, right? Okay, now all of a sudden he ends up spinning. His whole strategy is completely shot for the day. Throw out whatever strategy you had. Your strategy is now, how can I get this car back in the top 10? Once he readjusted himself and got out of turn 1, he's already 31 seconds behind the lead. That's not an easy day to recover from. I don't care how talented you are on road courses. I don't care how talented of a driver. 31 seconds is a lot of time to make up. And especially on a road course where drivers are getting a lot faster. They're getting in the corners. They're finding their groove. Chase Elliott ends up recovering. And yes, the strategy helped. He finished stage 1 in 5th. Didn't place anywhere in stage 2. And then there was a late caution late in the race when he was climbing through the field. Late caution at the race, and the final restart. Before the final restart happened, he came down pit road for 4 fresh tires. Restarted 23rd on the final restart and got all the way up to 4th. It was not an easy top 5 day for Chase Elliott, especially after getting punted in turn 1 by Ross Chastain. Remarkable job by the driver of the 9. And I know we have a lot of Chase Elliott fans that listen to the show, and they said it. They're like, I'm really confident in the 9 team this year with how much speed that we feel like he has. And I'll be honest with you, I feel like, and I will say this, I feel like if Ross Chastain does not end up collecting Chase Elliott in turn 1, I believe Chase Elliott ends up winning this race. Do I think Bell's car was really good in the final final quarter of the race? Absolutely. But the driver of the 9, I thought that car was so much better all throughout the race, and you saw it. And I get it. The final restart, he had 4 fresh tires compared to everybody else. But the one thing I will say, if he's in the front of the pack, I mean, there's a whole different strategy as well. So he's not pitting when, he's pitting probably at the same time the leaders are pitting, or, maybe a lap later. there's a whole different strategy. So for me, if Chase Elliott does not get spun, yeah, Chase Elliott's your winner in this race, and I'll stand by that. And for my Chase Elliott fans, you are damn right. You're damn right. He's got a lot of speed this year in that 9, and not just that. In the beginning part of this year, this all stemmed to me from last year late in the playoffs. All of our doubts that we've had for Chase Elliott the last 2 years since the snowboarding incident of not having confidence, of not having the speed, of not being able to drive the car, right? He was on Dale Jr. Download last year talking about how this car is difficult to comprehend. Whatever happened in the playoffs, he's comprehended how to drive this car and also have the speed inside to go be a race-winning driver. I know it's an expedition race, but we've seen him win a race so far this year at the Clash. Other drivers that I wanted to give a shout or talk about, Trackhouse Racing. So if you guys follow us on Facebook at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, each and every week before the race starts, we give basically ones to watch, who's trending up, who's trending down. Definitely not NASCAR Gambling Podcast. Those guys are awesome. So if you need gambling assistance, definitely listen to them. Number one, I'm just trying to, maybe put my hat in the ring a little bit as well. This past week, if you read our Sunday Facebook message about COTA, I was very high on Trackhouse Racing entering this race. I'm like, oh, Shane Van Gisbergen. That was my pick to win the race, one. But not just was that my pick to win the race. It's SVG on a road course. I was like, that's going to be very difficult to beat. Not just that, Ross Chastain has been absolutely incredible at COTA. According to driveraverages.com, he's got a top 3 average finish at that track since 2022. He's got 1 win. All the numbers aligned with Ross Chastain. Then I was talking about Suarez. Well, the one thing about Suarez that was really interesting, Daniel Suarez had a lot of speed this weekend. Qualifying, he qualified 5th. He was he was at the top of the board on practice. And then, of course, we had rookie phenom Connor Zilisch enter the race. And what a great scheme, by the way. Red Bull, perfect. What happened to Trackhouse, though? Van Gisbergen ended up finishing 6th. He ended up leading 23 laps. Him and Kyle Busch really, they really led. They led. Kyle led 42. Shane Van Gisbergen led 23. Combined, they led 55 out of 95 laps. Or, excuse me, definitely did my math wrong there. Sorry about that. They led 65 out of the 95 laps on Sunday. But for me, Shane Van Gisbergen finishing 6th, his car faded at the end of the race. There's no explanation for it. Chastain, same thing. They fell off with speed at the end of the race. But a real weird scenario ended up happening. Daniel Suarez ended up getting loose. Daniel Suarez got loose on lap 51. Coming out of 6B, I believe it was. Yeah, I believe he came out of 6B. Ended up getting loose by himself. Connor Zilisch got down on the apron to try to prevent the wreck or avoid the wreck. But actually just ended up crashing. He ended up crashing with Daniel Suarez. Both Trackhouse cars of the 99 and the 87 DNF'd. It was an unusual day for me with Trackhouse. I expected at least one of them to be in the contention for the race win between Bell, Byron, and Reddick. I was pretty high on Shane Van Gisbergen, but I just think he beat his car up too much in the beginning of the race. And like I said, I think he ended up fading, but this is a lessons learned for me with him because I get you won your first ever race at the Chicago Street Course, but that was a course that nobody on the circuit has ever done. And I'm glad you won it because you ended up loving NASCAR so much you came over. And I think he's really good for the sport. I do. These drivers have been at COTA now. This was year 5 at COTA. These guys know what they're doing. And for Shane, I think that this is going to be a learning curve. I think Shane Van Gisbergen, in my opinion, he starts off so fast in all these races. And he beats and wear and tears his equipment too fast. And I think once he gets that perfect balance of the driving ability, of preserving your equipment and going when you need to go, you go, it's going to make him so much more lethal. Going back to Ross Chastain now. Chastain is very lucky that Chase Elliott didn't punt him and ended up having him finish worse than 12th. I'm just saying. For the people that make fun of me because they know I like Ross Chastain, it was a stupid move. I mean, he dive bombed lap 1. I mean, turn 1, lap 1. I get it. You're trying to advance your position and all that type of stuff, but that's not the move you make in the first lap of the race. So yeah, is Ross in the wrong? Absolutely. I'm not going to deny that. But for me, it's Ross Chastain. You know he's going to be aggressive. Now we're lucky. I mean, again, Chase Elliott ended up finishing 4th, so I mean, Chase ended up preserving his day. Ross's car faded, ended up finishing 12th. So a little bit of a disappointing day for Trackhouse Racing. All right. Couple of final points coming out of COTA. One, I had an interesting conversation with a fan of ours on the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast. And each week, he does a really good job coming up and coming social media influencer. He does a really interesting thing each and every week, and he always gives it's always a question provoking. He brings up the points and all that type of stuff, and he's like, "Where do you guys see it?" It's just an interaction, and I had this conversation with multiple of our fans. The first 3 weeks of this season, as I said multiple times on this episode tonight, are very, very interesting. You had Outlier Race and Super Speedway, Outlier Race and Super Speedway, and then you had Outlier Race and Road Course. The first 3 weeks of the 2025 season have proved to me absolutely nothing on who could be a contender. Yes, but Christopher Bell has 2 wins in the bank. Definitely has the upper hand. Not going to lie, he's the upper hand. But that after these last 3 weeks, I'm not sitting there saying I'm still confident in Christopher Bell being the 2025 champion. Last week at Atlanta, right place, right time. He led 1 lap in that race. Right place, right time. COTA, he led the final 8 laps. Now, granted, his car was really good at the end of COTA. The first 3 weeks have absolutely taught me nothing on who my title contender will be, or even my championship 4. Maybe Bell is starting to warm me up into putting him into the championship 4 after week 3. I need more data. I need more information. We haven't even gone into the analytics yet this season because Super Speedway, and Road Course, they don't provide me the data I really want to prove my points on the circles. But the one thing I did bring up to him, to one of these fans, I said, the first 3 weeks may have not given me a championship threat or a championship contender or my Final 4 picks, but I can damn tell you right now, there's a couple of drivers that are coming out the first 3 weeks that are in hot water. And they ran out of DNF / bad finishes already. Who are those drivers? Well, let's go down the list. Daniel Suarez sits 30th in the points right now. It's not good. And for me, Suarez kind of ran out of those tracks, quote unquote, that he's good at. Next time we see a track that I will put Daniel Suarez in maybe possible contention is Talladega, possibly Texas. Another driver that I look at right now, Ty Gibbs. right now sits 36 in the points. This was a playoff driver last year. He has one DNF. He sits 36th in the points. Ty Gibbs does. Now, he is in JGR equipment. We do have some ovals coming up. I expect the balance of him coming back into the picture again coming up in the next few weeks. The other driver I look at and I'm like, kind of in hot water after the first 3 weeks is Brad Keselowski. Now, I do expect the 6 car to get much better over the next few months or next 4 weeks. I mean, there's some tracks that are coming up that are Brad Keselowski tracks that I'm like, Brad, I'm confident Brad's going to get a top 10 this week at Phoenix. I'm confident Brad's going to do well at Vegas. I mean, Homestead's not really the Brad Keselowski track, but I'm also confident that he's going to do very well at Martinsville, Darlington, and Bristol. That 3-race stretch going into Easter is going to elevate Brad probably from the 26 points in the or 26th place in points and elevate him up. But as I tell our fans, there's some drivers, like I said, these drivers ran out of opportunities to have bad finishes at this point. I mean, Brad Keselowski, I mean, his average finish according to NASCAR.com right now is 26.6, and he's got one DNF. His average start's 23rd. I mean, that's not going to cut it. So, as my final point in regards to the points, yes, the first 3 weeks have not shown me true title contenders, but it definitely has showed me drivers that are out of they're completely out of having bad finishes. Completely done. Need to figure it out. Final point coming out of Coda. NASCAR, if you follow us on the Broken Wheel Bearing podcast, I posted this up on our Facebook page and I said this. NASCAR has had a viewership increase over the last 2 races compared to their 2024 dates. Daytona, what's called is it Daytona's Daytona. Everyone's going to be checking in. They're always going to have the higher viewership just because it's Daytona. Last week in Atlanta, I kind of kept eyes on it. Fox earned a 4.5867 million viewership, and that was according to jski.com at the And Better Health 400. That was a 1% increase from 2024. Now, 2025's Echo Park Automotive Grand Prix viewership, according to jski.com, was up to 4.132 million viewers. That was up 25% from last year's race that ran in late March. Couple things that are, first of all, I love the sport more than anything. So seeing these numbers made me really excited, very happy to see. I'm hoping that these are more viewers that we're finally getting into the sport. But I'm really happy with the progression that we're on right now with NASCAR. But the first 3 races were on Fox. So I'm hoping, and I hope to God that these numbers continue as we head over to FS1. But this is incredible news, and this is what you want. And I think that's where this new TV deal, they kind of banked on the viewership going up. I know a lot of people sit there and say, woke car, no. As the words of my man Tri-Oval Life, he says this all the time. NASCAR ain't dead. It's not. And right now, it looks like it's starting to grow back a little bit. Very happy to see that. Very happy to see that. And the final point, final point from Coda. How do we feel about someone asked me, how do I feel about the new road course layout at Coda? I liked it. I really enjoyed it a lot. I liked how they shortened the course. It gave us 2 different passing zones, 2 different braking zones. A shorter distance gave us more laps on the track, right? We got 95 laps instead of 64 when they run the full course layout. The full course layout was cool. It was, the problem with it is I thought that the cars got too fast and they spread out way too much on the full course layout. So I was really happy to see them shorten the race. Like I said, 95 laps, they added 2 more passing zones, and it really provided more of an aggressive type of racing. I liked it. I thought it was really cool, and I know the contract's up with Coda this year, and are they going to go back to Coda? I guess is the question. I personally believe they're going to. I hope they are, and if they are, let's keep the shorter course. Let's keep the shorter course. I don't think fans are going to complain about seeing cars drive past them more times than not in a race. At at much at much shorter timing, right? Like you're gonna see, you see those cars like they're gonna come past you a lot more frequently, and So I like the shorter distance. I would love to see NASCAR keep that on the schedule moving forward. So um. Cool. Green and white checker comes out on that for tonight's episode of the Coda discussion. Final points as we enter Phoenix this week. Um, One, Chase Briscoe. The appeals panel overturned the L2 level penalty to the 19 team after Daytona. James Small will not be facing a 4-race suspension, and Chase Briscoe got all of his points back. So if you were hearing me like kind of like stall out on the points discussion for a second, that's because Chase Briscoe originally was in the 30s. He is now back up to 15th in the points. So Chase Briscoe's penalty, NASCAR overturned the Chase Briscoe penalty after Daytona. He is now getting all of his points back, and James Small does not have to face a penalty. Final update, and that according to NASCAR.com, Austin Cindric has been penalized coming out of Coda. From Austin Cindric, if you remember in the race, he basically got into a scuffle with Ty Dillon on the front stretch, ended up turning intentionally into Ty Dillon. Um, he ended up Cindric did not have a suspension, but Austin Cindric, as a result, lost 50 driver points and was fined $50,000, dropping him from 11th to 35th in the point standing. So Cindric is now a driver with the penalty. I'm looking at going, you know, yeah, you may not have put yourself as a title contender, but you are now in hot water. You are now in hot water. Um, Finally, for all my Kyle Larson fans, yes, you can see I'm wearing a Kyle Larson hat tonight. Kyle Larson has the 5 team has been suspended. 2 pit crew members have been suspended for a lost wheel at the Circuits of the America race as well. So that's your penalty report coming out of Coda. Cindric's been penalized. He will be docked 50 driver points, $50,000, no race suspension. Kyle Larson is facing a pit crew suspension for the loose wheel. And then, of course, Chase Briscoe, if you're just joining us live now, Chase Briscoe has ended up having his penalty overturned, and James Small will not be facing a suspension, and Briscoe gets all of his points back. So, all right. Before we get into Phoenix as well, your updated Cup Series point standings. Right now, first place, William Byron's number 1 in the points. Number 2 is Ryan Blaney. 3 is Tyler Reddick. 4 is Christopher Bell. 5 is Chase Elliott. Number 6 is Bubba Wallace. 7 is Alex Bowman. 8th is Michael McDowell. Shocker there. Kyle Busch is 9th. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is 10th. Chris Buescher is 11th in the points. 12th is Joey Logano. 13th, John Hunter Nemechek. Back-to-back top 10s. Ended last week at the Circuit City America. 14th is everyone's favorite driver, Carson Hocevar, in the points. 15th, Chase Briscoe. After the penalty got overturned, he jumps to 15th. And Kyle Larson rounds out the top 16 right now in driver points. Yeah. So that is your NASCAR. So far, that's your Cup Series point standings after Coda and entering Phoenix. So Valley of the Sun this week, folks. Valley of the Sun. And that's right. We are back at Phoenix Raceway. First trip out of 2 this year in the 2025 campaign. We already know the second trip is the championship race, and the first race is here in March. I'm going to forewarn all of my fans this week because I'm going to be honest with you. I hear you, I see you, and I listen to you. Everyone that is a fan of this sport, I get it. You guys complain about the first race of Phoenix, the first race of Martinsville, the first race of Bristol, yada, yada, yada. remember that the first race at Phoenix, just because it's bad does not mean we need to take it off the championship weekend. There is a massive difference. I've been saying this now for 2 years. There is a massive difference in Phoenix in March compared to the championship race in November. There right now, what these drivers are trying to do is if you don't have race winning speed, if you can't win the race, get yourself a damn good point stay. Let's get out of Phoenix and we move on to the next week. It's the same thing that's going to happen in Martinsville. It's the same thing that's probably going to happen at Bristol unless the tire compound comes in. That's what happens when we race at tracks twice a year. And the second time we come to these events, it's in the playoffs. Totally different atmosphere. Totally different implication. So before we go on to Twitter and become keyboard warriors on how to fix NASCAR after Sunday during Sunday's race, remember, Phoenix in March is massively different than Phoenix in the championship race. So that's my soapbox. That's my TED Talk. Thank you for joining that one. Let's get into some picks this week. Before we get into picks, though, if you're joining live right now on YouTube and you still have to vent from Coda, feel free. Blown Engine line's wide open. Blown Engine chat line. Pop a chat. Hopefully, I can be the voice of reasoning for you to be much happier from what you saw at Coda. Let's get into some picks this week. Let's do my 4 picks, my dark horse, and 1 to watch. Pick number 1 this week for me. I'm going to go Ryan Blaney. According to driveraverages.com, since February of 2022, Ryan Blaney's in 6 races. His average finish has been 2.8 with 6 top 5, 6 top 10s, and 6 top 20s with 266 laps led. Crazy thing for me is Blaney's best finish in that stretch is second. His lowest finish at this track in that stretch is 5th. Ryan Blaney is definitely destined to get a top 5, but Ryan Blaney's been so damn close at winning this track, right? He got stuck behind Chastain in 2023 at the championship race in the sprint race in March. He ended up coming up just short behind William Byron. I think Ryan Blaney overcomes it this week. Give me Ryan Blaney. That's the driver pick number 1 for me. Pick number 2, I'm going to go Ross Chastain here. I know a lot of people probably just threw up because they're mad at Ross Chastain, whatever. I'm a data guy. I want to get highest odds with the data. Ross Chastain, since February of 2022, according to driveraverages.com, Ross Chastain in 6 races has a 9.2 average finish at this track with 1 win, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, and 5 top 20s. His best finish in that stretch is first, obviously 2023 in the championship race. And his worst finish in that stretch was 24th because Denny Hamlin threw a temper tantrum and just basically said, if I'm going to fall backwards, you're falling with me. And then went on his podcast to celebrate that. If Ross Chastain does not get, if Denny Hamlin doesn't take Ross Chastain out of that race, Chastain probably finished in the top 10, has a higher average finish than 9.2. I like Ross Chastain a lot this week. I feel like he's got his mojo back a little bit. He's racing aggressive. I know that I know a lot of fans were not happy with it, but I like Ross a little bit this week. Give me Ross Chastain as driver number 2. Driver number 3 at Phoenix that I like this week is William Byron. William Byron, according to driveraverages.com, in 6 races has a 8.3 average finish with 1 win, 3 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 190 laps led. His best finish was first, and his lowest finish was 18th. I think the 18th was the last spring, but there was a weird sequence of cautions that ended up screwing up all of Hendrick Motorsports. William Byron won this race in the spring of 2023. I know when we come to Phoenix, he's not the first driver to think of, but in the 6 races in the next-gen car, he's absolutely put up the numbers to prove that he could end up winning this race again this week. So far, I like Blaney, Chastain, Byron. 4th driver is going to be Tyler Reddick. Reddick, since the next-gen car, has an average finish of 11.2 in 6 races with 2 top 5s, 4 top 10s, 68 laps led, with the highest finish of third with the lowest of 23rd. So I like Reddick. Reddick is similar to Blaney. Now, Blaney just continues ripping off top 5s. Reddick has come close multiple times, never got over the hump. But I do like Tyler Reddick a lot this week. I think Toyota is going to be pretty good this week. Um, ones to watch, ones that I are trending upward. I like Chase Briscoe a lot in this race this week. That's a driver I like to see trending upwards. Um, remember, he's got to win here in the next gen car. Toyota has been very impressive here at this track over the last couple years. Briscoe won this race in a Stewart-Haas racing car. I like Chase Briscoe. I like him trending upwards. Another driver I like trending up is Christopher Bell. He won this race last spring. Again, another Toyota driver. He's got a 14 average finish, which isn't great. But again, he DNF'd in one of the championship races, so that kind of crushes his average finish. Take that out, he's a lot higher. Drivers I'm actually going to fade this week. Kyle Busch, I'm fading. He has not been good in this next gen car here. His highest finish was 7th. His lowest was 25th, but he's got an average finish of 15 flat in 6 races. I'm fading Kyle Busch this week. Also, finally, I'm going to fade, and I know this one is going to cause an uproar. I'm fading Chase Elliott this week. I know a lot of people, and I know I know the speed's there, and I like it a lot, but since the next gen car, he's only got a 16.4 average finish in 5 races. He's only got 1 top 10 in 5 races in the next gen car. He's led 57 laps, but his highest finish in the next gen car was 8th, and his lowest 28th. I know a lot of people are excited about the speed that they've seen from the 9. I know a lot of people, myself included, and maybe he figured this out in the next gen car. But until I start seeing that car run in the top 5 or winning the race, I'm fading Chase Elliott this week. And my final point from going into Phoenix for you fans, I look at a driver like Alex Bowman, right? There has been this big perception that Phoenix is the Alex Bowman track. And I brought this up to someone recently because everyone wants to sit there and tell me how good Alex Bowman is at Phoenix Raceway. Like, oh, yeah, he was. I pulled up his driver log from according to driveraverages.com. Okay. In 19 career races, at Phoenix, Alex Bowman does not have a top 5. He does not have a win. He's only got 2 top 10s, and that was a 6th on November 13, 2016, where I think we get this really sick perception because he was filling in for Dale Jr. that year. He ended up winning the pole, ended up finishing 6th, led 194 laps. Again, that race itself did wonders for Alex Bowman. That race did wonders. They become the simulator driver for Hendrick Motorsports in 2017 and eventually takes Dale Jr.'s ride over in 2018. And I think Bowman's a good driver. I just think that this perception that he's a really good racer at Phoenix, I think is kind of old. I think it's outdated. And the stats don't lie. He's got 2 top 10s in 19 career races at Phoenix. The sixth place finish on November 13, 2016. And the 9th place finish on March 12, 2023. Outside the 194 laps he led in replacement of Dale Jr. back in 2016, he led 2 more laps. That's it. And to be honest with you, you talk about top 15s. I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, he's only got what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's only got 7 times he's finished 15th or better in 19 career races at Phoenix. Alex Bowman to me is completely faded and not even a thought this weekend at Phoenix. So before we go, well, he's good at Phoenix. He did well for junior. But that was almost 10 years ago, folks. That was almost 10 years ago. All right. My picks this week, again, are going to be Ryan Blaney, Ross Chastain, William Byron, Tyler Reddick. And I am trending in the right direction. I like Christopher Bell and Chase Briscoe. Those are my guys trending in the right direction. Trending in the wrong direction, I'm going with Kyle Busch and Chase Elliott. And a driver I'm completely fading against the thought process, completely fading Alex Bowman. So, all right. And those picks will be up on our Facebook page at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast this upcoming Sunday. So, all right, folks. Well, with all that being said, that takes us to the checker flag on tonight's episode. Thank you so much to everyone tuning in on our Facebook Live or YouTube Live, excuse me. Great to have some fans listening to us throughout the whole show. Let me check out the chat line, see if we got anything coming through. And nope. Nothing came through on the chat line. All good there. Again, if you are listening to us on YouTube next week, feel free to join the Blown Engine chat line. We'd love to chat with you during our episode. Again, thank you so much for everyone tuning in tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure. 2 years of talking NASCAR with you. Let's continue keeping the show on the road. Show must go on, like Queen once said. Multiple ways to follow us. Again, Facebook, Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, YouTube channel at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, all good sources to be with us at all times talking NASCAR. With all that being said, enjoy your Phoenix race weekend. If you're going out there for camping and watching the race live, enjoy yourself. It should be beautiful weather again for you. With all that being said, have a wonderful, safe race weekend out in Phoenix. And we'll chat with all of you next Wednesday night here on YouTube at the Broken Wheel Bearing Podcast. Have a lovely evening. We'll talk to you next week. Good night.
Will you tell Mr. Dennett that Ricky Bobby is my best friend? And it's shaking big time.